I understand, but that's not on this. So I think once Good afternoon, everyone. It is 3 p.m. We will go ahead and call to order the regular meeting, which is our certification meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration for the month of March at 3 p.m. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Have all board members had an opportunity to take a look at the agenda? And presumably there are no comments, but if there are or proposed amendments, please make that known. Oh, sorry. I apologize, that is on me. This is what happens when you come running into a meeting with 3 minutes to spare. And I have my able director that is getting me back on track. In calling the meeting to order, we do need to say the pledge, and so I invite all of those that are willing and able to please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yep. Thank you again. No story there. I'm just moving too fast, going right down the agenda. So approval of the agenda. Are there any comments, proposed amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as provided.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the agenda as provided. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Going on to the next item on the agenda, that would be public comment. So I do note that we have a significant number of individuals that have signed up for public comment. As has been our custom in prior meetings where we have a large number, we reserve the right, as we've done previously, to modify the amount of time that is allotted for each individual to participate in public comment. Looks like we have 13, 14 individuals. So each member, person that comes up for public comment, will be provided with 3 minutes. Again, consistent with what we have done in the past. And first up is Sally Riddle.
Good afternoon. Sally Riddle, resident here in Cobb County. I just wanted to thank the board again and the workers for the Board of Election for the 2 Sundays of voting coming up here for our May primary. As I looked at the calendar, I suddenly realized that May 12th is Mother's Day. And I thought, how fantastic. Because given how women had to fight for the right to vote, how they protested, went on hunger strikes, marched, worked for years to get that amendment passed to the Constitution allowing them to vote, what better way to foment getting out to vote for women than doing it on Mother's Day and encouraging families to go vote as a family on Mother's Day. So I think this is a fantastic happenstance of the calendar that we're able to have Mother's Day as a day to vote and to honor our women who came before us in previous generations who fought so hard for this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riddle. Next up is Mr. Ben Williams.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Every time we approach this, I'm always reminded of 1965, Dr. King's work in pushing forth the Voting Rights Act. It's no secret that it has become increasingly challenged to get turnout for our elections. I am deeply grateful for the 2 dates that the board has put on the calendar. However, we are working hard to inform and mobilize our voters. And what I am here for is to ask the board, in addition to the 2 days in which are on the calendar for early voting, could we add a third Sunday prior to the 5th to our calendar as a Sunday for additional early voting for our constituents? We're working hard to educate, to help people understand the importance of it, and also to try to make up a lot of ground that's been lost because of disaffection of folk who have diminished interest in the voting process, period. Okay? So we'd like to get back to it, but in addition to the 2 Sundays, if in fact we could have the Sunday that precedes, I think, what is it, the 5th, for early voting. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mary Miller.
Hi, my name is Mary Miller, and I am a citizen of Cobb County. After fighting for the right to vote for many, it is a terrible idea to then limit the availability of voting. Not everyone has the good fortune of having a polling location nearby. Some of us have one even in our neighborhood, but many have to travel 10, 15, 20 miles to vote. And although for some of us it takes only a few minutes, for others the line and wait time can be very long. When fewer and fewer have paid vacation and flexible work schedules, it is imperative to provide as much access to weekend and evening voting as possible. Those of us who would like to speak about this issue here may not have the flexibility to show up for a 3 o'clock weekday meeting. I felt it was important to come as I am able. What better way to celebrate Mother's Day than to support or exercise a mom's right to vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. C.M. Miller.
Yes, my name is Mitch Miller. I just put CM, that's the way I sign everything. I'm a citizen of Cobb County for 25 years. Just wanted to rise today to say very briefly a few things. First of all, I'm opposed to taking away any Sunday voting, May 12th or otherwise, just because some may have postulated there would be lower turnout on that day and or other reasons. It's my understanding that Cobb County already has fewer hours of Sunday voting as compared to other counties of similar size within the state. I'm also wanted to say I'm of the opinion that the exercise of the franchise by all persons eligible should be protected and facilitated by all appropriate agents of the state and local government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Bob Maynard.
My name is Bob Maynard. I've been a Marietta resident for 38 years. I'd just like to ask a series of questions. I know you won't respond to them, but I'd just like to get them on record. I'm not sure how you can tell a candidate who lives in a congressional legislative district they can't run for office without a decision from the court. 3 candidates were told they couldn't run, 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. This seems like an anti-democratic position to take. Also, I go to most of these meetings, but I seem to have missed the meeting where you all voted for this, accepting the home rule map. I don't remember seeing that. And I'm just curious as to why you would do that, as opposed to the Superior Court judge's ruling. And in addition to that, recognized by the Attorney General in the Cobb elections until 3 days before qualifying. So you call this out for what it is, voter suppression, election interference, or disenfranchising candidates, lawfare, et cetera. But it seems to be just a strictly political decision that's going to basically create planned chaos. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maynard. Mr. Parks, Boyd Parks.
I can do a couple of things. Cue them up enough. You don't need to put them up yet. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be back. Sorry I've been away for a while, but also sorry that I feel I need to come back due to the numerous issues that seem to be floating around. First thing is the envelope that we're going to see here is how I received my absentee ballot. It was stored by the Postal Service for 9 days. I had to call the Inspector General, and he in turn referred it to somebody else more local. But seems to me that tracking by the post office might be a good solution to help people make sure they get their ballots on time. I was poll watching 3 times during the primary, twice early voting, saw no big issues at that time. However, on March 12th at Ackworth AC1B, at the end of the day, the scanners had recorded 3 more ballots than had come through the BMD. I say ballots, I don't know what they were recording, but normally that would be ballots that would be scanned. The poll managers seem to have no clue as to why or how that could be. If you look at 2,711 precincts across the state, which is the number the state election board gave me, and there were 3 ballots extra in those 2,700 precincts, that's 8,133 votes that could be overvoted in any given race. Not a small problem, but rather an outcome-changing event if that happened regularly. Still as much confusion on redistricting. Secretary of State's MVP data is still not updated, and I understand that has to come from the county. Not unique to Cobb, obviously, but still a huge problem. On Friday, the 12th of the month, the 22nd of the month, this coming Friday, we have an event at Adventure Outdoors. Like everybody to come if you can. It cuts across both sides of the aisle. It's for voting integrity, election integrity, and having a nice barbecue dinner at the same time. So come out if you can. Thank you.
I understand, but I believe it is. Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Thank you.
Jene Franklin.
Hello, I'm Jene Franklin, a Cobb County resident. Taking away Sunday voting will impact Black voters, causing adverse political outcomes. Georgia should be looking at ways to improve voting access. My church advocates calling it Souls to the Polls. I have an 11-year-old daughter, so what better way to celebrate a family outing and taking her to know about voting? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Franklin. Jerine, is it Willis? Willis.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. Jerine Willis, a Cobb County resident, currently the president of the Cobb County NAACP, and voting access is a right that most citizens look forward to. And any elimination of any days that would offer people an opportunity to go to the polls should be classified as unconstitutional. Disenfranchising people's right should not happen. And I think by eliminating any days, especially a Sunday, as Ms. Franklin said previously, Black churches in our communities look forward to souls to the polls. Sometimes that's the only way to get people to the polls. So by eliminating any days in the state of Georgia would be a duress to the voting access that our people, all people that have that right to cast their ballot, by eliminating. So I hope you all take complete consideration and not eliminate any days. As she said, Mother's Day is a great way to celebrate. We all look forward to making sure our young future understands the importance and the value of it. By taking any days away, especially a Sunday, takes away a lot of people's rights. So please reconsider if that's a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Willis. Cammy Sanchez?
Hello, everybody. My name is Cammy Sanchez. I'm a resident of Northeast Cobb, have lived in the same house for 40 years. I am also a poll worker. I worked 6, 7, 8 days plus election day. What I observed this time, this is not the first time that I've poll worked, but this time turnout was extremely light. I don't know that this will be the same with all elections, but there were a lot of poll workers there that everybody's paying for, and no voters. A few voters who came in were very upset because of the ballots. There were 11 names on the ballot. Only one was eligible to be voted for. And the other ballot, okay, we're not going to talk about that one, but it was fine. But the other thing is, when you change sites, a voting precinct site, people get very upset. Some of them came in and said, I had no idea where this was, where to go, what to do. So we need to look at that. I did stop by a church on the way home from working because they have tabulator tabs on the outside of the doors that you can take a picture of that show the results of that day's voting on election day. And I took a picture of that, and then I went by there the next day and talked to a gentleman who happened to be an elder of the church. That was not my polling place, but I talked to him, and he said, thanked him for having being a polling place, and he said, I'm not sure we're going to do this again. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, it costs a lot of money to hold one of these elections. And I said, I'm sure it does. You have the building open all day. And I said, don't you get paid for that? And he said, well, yeah, we do, somewhat. And I said, can I ask you how much you get paid? And he said, $50. I said, $50 a day for a polling place to be open all day? He said, yeah, it barely pays for the electricity. And I said, it barely pays for the water that we use. We flush the toilets, we drink the water, we wash our hands. A lot of poll workers there. So I'm not sure that's right. And I've been told that I have to write a FOIA to find out that information, which is ridiculous. You're taking our money. I should be able to pick up the phone and call somebody on the Board of Elections and say, how much do you pay a voting place for this? That was one of my big issues. I would like to say to Ms. Riddle, my grandmother was a suffragette, and she went to Buffalo and picketed for the rights to women voters. And Mr. Parks, I agree with everything that you said as well.
Ms. Sanchez, I apologize
Time?
for interrupting you. Your time is expired.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Donald Barth.
Good afternoon, Donald Barth. I wanted to come up here and address y'all over an issue, DEI. It's your issue. First of all, we keep hearing the word disenfranchise, created by this board. I'm not playing when I tell you that you have divided Cobb County with the screwy things you've done. We get to the E, entitlement. You entitle who you wanted to run. You set this up so only the ones you want to run. And I, the big I, interference. You elected to fix this map to interfere with all of Cobb County. You went out of your way to put a map in place that was developed to keep Jerica Richardson in her job. Can I ask the board, when you go home, what would this have to do with Jerica Richardson and her right to hold the seat? Nothing. No way can you ever justify what you have done. You have set about to ruin an election process. You didn't defeat me because I'm a man. You didn't defeat Reggie because he's a black man. You didn't defeat Alicia because she's a woman. You defeated us because we weren't one of your chosen people. You're wrong. I hope every one of you gets the big eye, and that's indicted except for Debbie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barth. Christine Rossman.
Hello, Board. Christine Rosman. I'd like to address the first couple of speakers that were talking about having more time to vote, because I worked elections. I don't know if any of you all did, but it was dead, okay? It was dead. I worked a couple of different places. I talked to other people that were working other places, and it was dead. And you have 8 poll workers, and every 2 hours, okay, how many did you? They may have processed 2. Some people processed 1. Then you'll get somebody that was real popular and they processed 10. It was pathetic. And so, I mean, we don't want to inconvenience anybody. You know what? I can guarantee you, the people that vote will stand in line at Chick-fil-A for 30 minutes. Cumulatively, during the week, stand in line for an hour. But we're trying to coddle everybody? What is this about? How about disenfranchising? You're disenfranchising me as a voter when you have this whole, I mean, I know that this is part of Georgia and everything else of having this elongated time to go ahead and vote, but it's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to be adding more, and because Sundays, like, nobody shows up, okay? So I'm not sure where everybody lives that you're having all these lines that you have to deal with, because the rest of us aren't. Because we're basically kind of a laughing stock. I have friends in other states, and they're like, what's going on in Georgia? What's going on in Cobb County? And it's like, it's too embarrassing. Okay, I go onto the SOS site. It's giving me different information than when I look at these new maps. So I don't know, is Barry Loudermilk my congressman, or is Rich McCormick? I don't know, because I can't get a straight answer. So who do I go to? I do know who my commissioner is. I'm lucky, because I'm not in this part where it's like, oh, home rule? Oh, no, legislative maps? Because it's like a banana republic. When you're making decisions on, oh, we're just going to do what we want to do and not follow the rule of law, but we're supposed to follow the rule of law. God forbid we don't follow the rule of law. God forbid if we exceed more than 30 seconds or like another 3 seconds after our time's up. I also actually would like to apologize to Tate, because it sounds like you got yourself into a hot mess here, and we, the people of Cobb County, do not fault you whatsoever. This is years in the making. You don't get this level of dysfunction overnight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossman. Mike Benz.
Thank you. Mike Benz, Cobb County resident. Served as a poll watcher, and just wanted to say that was a very positive experience. Appreciate the board making the half-day schedules available. I think that made a big difference. And I think I saw that also with my cohorts. I was there as a Democrat watcher, but my cohorts with the Republicans, you know, it was very cordial. Everybody was, you know, I think it was a good experience. Yes, there was both places where I watched they were really overstaffed. And I don't know how you can predict that or plan for that, but no doubt. I mean, there was a lot of overstaffing and overcapacity, you know, for people who needed to vote. As far as Sunday voting goes, I grew up in the South, down in Columbus, and nothing was open on Sunday when I grew up. And I'm not trying to go way back or anything, but I mean, you know, you couldn't couldn't go out to dinner after church. There was no place open. And, you know, there were no jobs. There was nothing open. So we have a situation now where people are able and many times required to work on weekends and Sundays and evenings, and families have to have two wage earners to make it. And they may be sleeping in on Sunday. That may be the only day they have a chance. And whether there's a long line or a short line, everyone should have the opportunity to do that. And just hope you will keep the days and make it easier for people to vote. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Benz. And finally, Mr. Gabriel Sanchez.
Hello, thank you so much for letting me speak today. My name is Gabriel Sanchez. I was born and raised in Cobb County. I'm a son of Colombian immigrants. And I'm not talking about this today, but I am also a candidate for State House District 42. But today I want to focus specifically on voting. A lot of my work focuses on voting rights and organizing our community to be more civically engaged. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, you know, the U.S. in general, and including Georgia, has one of the lowest voter turnout rates in the world, especially amongst developed countries. And so, you know, I think that cutting any days early voting is the exact opposite thing we need to do right now in order to solve that problem. There's a lot of reasons why people don't want to vote in this country and in this state, including a lot of, you know, economic disparities, as well as people not believing in the institutions. But I also think a lot of, you know, voter suppression is also a very big factor in that. And obviously Georgia has a very long history to this day of voter suppression. And so we should not be eliminating early voting days, because as many people have mentioned, voting on the weekends is sometimes the only time a lot of people have to vote. And there are many states in this country who do their primaries during weekends instead, because they understand that it helps with voter turnout and making it easier for people to vote. And so I don't really understand this weird talk about how we're coddling people. I feel like voting is a basic fundamental right in our democracy, and is so important, so we should treat it as such and make it as accessible as possible to people. And I don't understand how you can disagree with democracy like that. But regardless, I really hope that we can keep Sunday voting on Mother's Day, because I think it's important to make sure we have voting every single day, including especially on Saturdays and Sundays, to really help with accessibility and making sure that people's voices are heard, especially people's voices who usually aren't heard, like people in my community. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. That concludes the public comment portion of our meeting.
I didn't realize you didn't sign up the normal way. I'd like to speak.
I'm sorry, sir, when you say you don't sign up the normal way, my understanding,
I come to commission meetings and not election board meetings.
there was Ms. Brooks, I believe that there was a sign-up sheet, as there are always.
It's usually. And I
No.
didn't know that, you know, I was here 12 minutes before the meeting started. He came in when I came in.
Understood, but unfortunately, he did not sign up. Other individuals, I would presume, perhaps you saw, well, I can't say what you saw, what you didn't see. Unfortunately, sir, you did not sign up. You do have the opportunity as one, person that usually is here as a commenter. He was unable to be here today, and he shared his comments with the entire board via email. You're more than welcome to send that to you. I apologize to the extent that there's a different location for the sign-up sheet, but ever since I've been on this board, dating back to 2021, our sign-up sheet is there on the first or the second rows on the table. So I apologize for that, sir. But we're going to go ahead and move on. Okay. Sir, it's not a matter of Well, thank you for being here. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have the approval of our meeting minutes, our February 12th regular meeting, as well as our March the 5th special called meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? And does anyone have any proposed revisions? Yes, Mr. Bruning.
On the third page, under old business, I believe there's a... Sorry. On the third page, under old business, there is a...
incomplete sentence.
Incomplete sentence. I think we should just strike that because that's the second sentence doesn't make any sense.
Understood. I see what you're referring to. I would agree to strike that. Does anyone else have any additional comments or proposed revisions to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for both the February 12th and March 5th special called meeting and the February 12th regular meeting and the March 5th special called meeting, subject to the proposed amendment.
So moved.
I can't make the motion because I wasn't at the second meeting.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting minutes, the February 12th meeting minutes with the proposed revision and the March 5th meeting as presented. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. New business. Director Fall, your report.
Sure. Good afternoon, board, members of the public. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to kind of combine the post-election report with my update because they all touch each other. So CP is going to bring up my slides for me, and then we'll jump in. And so today we'll be kind of covering a little bit about what occurred before Election Day, March 12th, occurrences on Election Day, post-election activities, and then I'm going to cover kind of some of the topics that would be in my regular report. So as we head into pre-election day, the next slide, and then after that, I have our AIP Total Voters. So this shows across 11 sites our total numbers across those dates. So you can see we have Maine, and then E&D is the elderly and disabled side of Maine over there. So we have those separate, and then across all of our sites. So you can see our East location, which is at the East Cobb Government Center, it was not a competition, but they won. They had the most voters, and so you can kind of see the different turnout across our sites there. And again, that's across all of the days. Then the next slide is just a sampling of some days I wanted to show for AIPs. This is all 11 sites combined. So the first is that first day, February 19th. we were at just over 1,600 voters. And then our first Saturday at 911, our second Saturday we were at 988. Our Sunday, we just did the one Sunday, we were at 514. Our highest day was Super Tuesday, March 5th. We were at just under 3,200 voters. We got a lot of calls that day. People thought, I think that was election day for Georgia, and so they went to go vote. We got a lot of calls about that our signs were wrong, saying March 12th was the election and that we were wrong, or that the website was wrong. So I think that kind of spurred people to get out, which is great. It was our highest day, and then our last day, which is typically the highest day that we see in AIP, we were at 2935. And so those, again, just a sampling of days to kind of show a full picture across the weeks we were open. Moving on to absentee by mail, ABM, we had 2,616 total voted ballots from ABM. So you can see we issued just over 3,600. We received back just over 2,700. We rejected 184. 44 were cured. And so that gave us a total of the 2,616 absentee by mail voters, and I'll talk a little bit about USPS and the piece that played in a little bit. But next is the issue that we released a statement about the day that it was identified to us. So I wanted to make sure to talk about this because we haven't had a public meeting since the incident occurred. So on Friday, February 23rd, we mailed out 194 ballots. Of those 194 ballots, they were all Republican ballots. However, 75 should have been Democratic ballots. This was identified Monday, February 26th, so the next working day. That same day we put out a statement. It went to the legal organ, I know MDJ published it, AJC, as well as our own website. And so we had that there. We contacted all those voters with whatever method we had. If they had a phone number on their application, we called them. If they didn't have a phone number, we emailed them. If they didn't have a phone number or an email, we did send them a letter. So letting them know, and then we reissued the correct ballots to those remaining voters. And so this was caused by a human error. It was a Friday afternoon mistake on a Friday afternoon. Someone just didn't proof their work before uploading a spreadsheet to the final printer. So this was not a system failure. It wasn't a breakdown in any of the systems that we have in place. So we did implement a new checklist that will require 2 signatures in the office to pass off approval on that spreadsheet before that spreadsheet is sent to the printer, to ensure that we don't have the same issue happen again, to make sure all of our numbers can be adjudicated before we hit print. So that's the system that we implemented there. Okay, moving on to election day. It was overall a pretty quiet day for us. Just a few issues I wanted to highlight. So Organo 2 did open 20 minutes late. That was a new facility, and the code that we had was incorrect. So it took them about an extra 20 minutes to get there, so they got in at 6:20. The area supervisor went out there to help them get open as quickly as possible, so they were able to open at 7:20, so then they stayed open until 7:20 p.m. Wade Green 02, we had a poll pad issue. At first we thought it was a scanner issue. We got a call saying that the scanner isn't accepting the ballots. So in that situation, what we typically do is we take out a new scanner. So we took out a new scanner, and that scanner wasn't accepting those ballots either. So we called into the Secretary of State's office. They have a little war room where you can talk to all the players kind of at once. And I was able to get a hold of them. And they looked on their end, and it looked like that our poll pads were issuing voters at Wade Green 02, Wade Green 01 ballots. So that was an issue with no ink with the poll pad system. That was not something that we had done. We don't assign those PDF ballots to the poll pads. I don't believe we have that level of access here. So what they were able to do is go in and push through the Wade Green 02 ballots. So starting from that moment when we were on the phone with them, they were issuing the correct ballot. So good news, the scanner did its job, right? That scanner was programmed to only accept Wade Green 02 ballots. And when it was getting Wade Green 01, it rejected those. So that was a good catch. So what we did is myself and my election equipment manager, Michael Dietrich, went out to the site. We signed over those 21 ballots from the poll manager's custody into mine. I transported them back to the precinct, or to our main office, and immediately put them into our locked EMS room where we do all of our election night reporting. And then we were able to take those ballots, those 21 ballots that said Wade Green 01, that should have been Wade Green 02, over to our duplication team that was working in ABM. So the duplication team is one representative from the Republican Party, one from the Democrat Party that they send over, and then they were able to duplicate those 21 ballots onto Wade Green 02 ballots. So then at the end of the night, when the Wade Green 02 scanner media came back, we put those memory cards into our scanner that was in the EMS room. We got that up and going. We added those 21 duplicated ballots and then closed out their totals. So their totals on the election night reporting system are accurate to include those 21 ballots that originally would not scan at that location. And then the other issue with ballots that came up was McClure 01 and Lost Mountain 04. So this was a co-located precinct at McClure Middle School. And we had gotten a heads up that there was an issue with the scanner, but they were able to resolve it. The rest of the ballots worked fine. So advised the Lost Mountain 04 staff to place that ballot in the unscanned ballot envelope, which is a red envelope that goes inside their red sealed bag that should be on their front seat when they come into the election night drop-off system. And then we would scan it like what we did with the Wade Green 02 ballot. So didn't get that back because it was never in the red bag. It was found towards the end of last week, that one ballot. It was in their regular paperwork folder, so it wasn't in the immediate check for election night. So I believe it was on Friday we discovered the red envelope that was from Lost Mountain 04 with this unscanned ballot. So I'm looking at it, and me and Kara, my elections manager, are talking, and why couldn't this one scan, but they didn't have any issues? Well, then we looked at it and saw that it said McClure 01. So since this was a co-located precinct, what had happened was a McClure voter had wandered over to the Lost Mountain 04 scanner. Again, the scanner did its job by not accepting a ballot that wasn't for that precinct. And then the poll manager just didn't check to make sure that it said the correct precinct on there before taking the ballot and putting it in the unscanned folder. So we talked as a team and realized that it's important to have the voter verify their precinct on their ballot, right? That would have solved the Wade Green 02 issue with the first ballot, and it would have made sure that that McClure ballot didn't get scanned late. That was scanned this morning and added to their totals, so that is reflected in the election night reporting system and in our totals that we'll certify here today. So what our plan is to have the person who stands at the scanner that asks the voter to check their ballot, make sure their selections are correct before inputting in the scanner. We're gonna give them a kind of a blown up top part of the ballot and highlight the precinct name, because a lot of times what will happen is the worker will say, double check that your precinct is correct, and then they go, well, where is that? And then they show them their ballot, which is the last thing we want, right? We never want to see how a voter voted their ballot. So this will give them something to hold up to say, this is where your precinct name is on your ballot. Please double check that it says McClure 01 or Lost Mountain 04. And so that way they know before attempting to put it in the scanner that it is the correct ballot for that scanner. So it'll be a partial training, partial signage edition that we'll use moving forward. So that was kind of our resolution for those two issues. Any questions about that so far?
I do have questions, but it goes even farther back, so I was going to reserve my questions until the end. I don't know if everyone else wants to do that as well.
We can do that.
Okay.
So the last part on this slide is, I just wanted to provide our most common reason we got calls on election day from our workers, and it was what we called the boot screen issue. So when they're turning on their BMDs, their ICXs, which is their ballot marking device, the touchscreen you vote on that prints off your ballot, it would show a black screen with text on it that looked like when your computer would crash, like back in the day. And so what that means is that the battery within that ICX, the ballot marking device, is dying, and you just need to make sure it's plugged in and get a little juice in there before it'll turn on. So you just turn it off, turn it back on, had no issues after that. The solution to this is to buy new batteries. And so those batteries are sitting at $115 each, and there's 2 batteries per ICX. So 2 times 115 times thousands of ICXs. We do anticipate this problem progressively getting worse as the machines get older. The batteries die, just like batteries do. So again, we do use that connection for it to have power during the day, but it causes a delay in the setup time because we have to wait for them to get enough juice to then turn on. And so that is one of the concerns that we have. Once we get all the scanners back, we'll have a better idea of what the immediate needs are on battery replacements, and then we'll look at that to the budget.
Okay.
So moving on to post-election day. So our post-election activity, we have a risk limiting audit this Wednesday, March 20th. It'll be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is open to the public for observation. It'll be at our office in the advanced voting room. We have 8 teams, so that means we'll have 8 teams of 2 people hand counting a random selection of batches. So because we have 8 teams, each party can put forward 8 representatives to observe. They can have 1 per team. And so the parties were notified of that today. And then the ballot batches are randomly selected tomorrow afternoon. We heard from the Secretary of State over the weekend that that's when they will select the batches through the software that they use for that. And then we'll know which batches we will be hand counting the next day. We go till we're done, so we feel confident we'll get done Wednesday, but in the event that we need to move to finish on Thursday, we'll continue Thursday at 9 a.m. Okay, next I have the precinct cards. So this I wanted to make sure we covered since there's been back and forth and I think some voter confusion about it, so I wanted to be really clear. So the white precinct cards on the left are the precinct cards that are created and data is pulled at the Secretary of State level, and then those cards are sent to our office. That's our permit number on there, 251. We pay for the postage, we send those out. The cards on the right are our new yellow precinct cards. So those are the cards that we created and that we sent out from our vendor directly. We pulled that data. It was brought to our attention that the white cards that have been mailed out, I was not aware that they had been mailed out. I make a conscious effort to make laps throughout the building during the day to check in on everyone, and where we store our mail is just not a part I walk by, so I was just totally unaware. And we didn't get an email heads up that these were being sent out, and I think our office is just used to pushing them straight out. But the cards on the left that were sent from the Secretary of State for us to mail out, that data was pulled, I've been told, on January 5th, and we didn't vote to change our precincts for both Mableton at the commission level and then all of our precincts until the meeting that was right after that. So the data that was pulled for the white cards was incorrect for a lot of voters, especially in and around the city of Mableton. And then the voting district information is incorrect for almost everyone because the redistricting is not reflected in that data yet, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I had incorrectly stated that the Secretary of State's office sent these out. That was my understanding of the process. Now I know they send them to us and then we mail them out. So yes, we were the ones that physically mailed them out. In the future, we know to check and make sure that the data that's pulled is correct. I'm hoping to see if we can get a heads up of when they're pulling that data so we know, because these cards do not come to us in precinct order. So I'm not sure how my staff could manually check over 500,000 postcards to ensure that they're correct. So I'm hoping that we can get that data so that way we don't have this happen again, and that way there's no more confusion. And so that is kind of the difference between the cards and maybe what we've heard in the media. That's kind of cutting right down to it. So next is USPS. So we have seen a widespread delay of mail delivery across the metro Atlanta area. It's been in the news, especially over the weekend. I know Senator Ossoff, I think, was just speaking on this. I saw in the news last night. So election mail, when it has that, CP, if you could flip back one more, I'm sorry. When you see that it has that official election mail logo that you can see on the left card, the yellow card, it's on the front of that. That official election mail logo, plus it being first-class mail, means it should be delivered within 3 days. And our yellow precinct cards were dropped on 3/3, and most voters didn't get them till the day before, the day of, or the day after the election, and a lot of our voters haven't gotten them at all. So if we flip back over to the USPS slide, I also just got word that there was a District 4 voter that just received their ballot on Saturday, 3/16, but it was postmarked 2/27. Obviously, we had someone in public comment raise a similar issue. So this is pervasive. This is not a Cobb County issue. This is across all metro areas. I would not be surprised if it's across the state. So We're working to collaborate with my fellow Metro election directors to get a meeting set with our Postmaster General as state representatives for USPS to try to figure out what their plan is to resolve this issue, because the volume that we'll experience the rest of the year will be tenfold to what we did for this election. So that is a concern. Unfortunately, once we drop it in the mail, that part is a little bit out of our hands, and so we try to do it as timely as we can, but we're hoping that setting up a meeting will help us to understand a better idea of what's going on at their level. So next up, redistricting. I promise we're almost there. We're almost to the fun part, the results. So if we flip over to the next slide, so we have completed the creation of the new precinct combos. So those are completed. So now the registration team is currently at the street information update portion of redistricting. So the way redistricting in our voter registration system works is that first you have to create all of the new precinct combos. So the precinct combo is your state house district, your state senate district, your state congressional district, your federal congressional district, your school board district. If you're in a city, your city council district, your county commissioner, all those things together is what makes your ballot combo, your precinct combo. Once all of those combos have been created, then we go into the street information system and we update street by street. In Cobb County, I believe we're just over 260,000 street segments. We manually go in and we assign a ballot combo to each and every street segment. So it's an extremely manual process. So there's no, I keep hearing you can upload the new maps. I wish we could upload the maps. That is not the system that we have in place. And I think where the confusion, another piece that we've seen in the media is over redistricting. And I was trying to think of a good way to explain why we're at where we're at, why we did not start redistricting until we received all of our maps. And it was made very clear that we had to create all new precinct combos, that we could not just alter existing combos. So I think about it, and I'm sorry if this is a little elementary, but I think about it like making a pizza, right? You have to have crust, sauce, cheese, and toppings to make a pizza, or like me, just cheese, extra cheese. So we had the crust and the sauce, we had the state house, the state congressional, state senate maps, but we were still waiting on the cheese and the toppings, right? We still didn't have a school board map, and we still didn't have a commission map. That is not a pizza make, that's breadsticks and marinara, right? You can't sell that as a pizza. So in order to create that combo, in order to create that pizza, we were still missing two vital ingredients. So we did not see how we could move forward creating a combo while missing vital pieces of that combo. Because if we move forward with old information, it takes obviously a lot of hours to go street by street, and then we would have had to pay lots of overtime to our employees, and then once we got that school board map, we would have had to start completely over. And all of those same employees would have had to work even more overtime. And then once we have a commission map ruling, or now that the home rule map is supersedious and that's what's being used for this upcoming election, we would have had to start completely over again. So because of that, in order to make that pizza, in order to make those combos, we had to have all of those maps in place. Otherwise, we would have been selling breadsticks and marinara, right? So I know that may seem, like I said, a little elementary, but it's a lot of nomenclature, and I want to make sure that everyone maybe has a better understanding of this process, how manual it is, and the reasons why we did not feel like we could move forward without those maps. Good news is our redistricting efforts will be completed by the end of March. I have no doubt about that. Everyone's My Voter page will be updated by April 1st. So you will see your correct districts, you will see your correct representatives in there, and that'll be in time for us to send out our uniformed and overseas voter ballots, which go out April 6th for the May election. So we will be ahead of that deadline for that. So we're looking good there. All right, enough about pizza. Now we're going to talk about results. So this is the high-level results that we had, just turnout numbers, our official and complete results. Board, you have the total report before you. Counting group is what the report calls the type of voting. So it's broken out by election day, advanced voting, absentee, by mail, and then provisional. And you can see ballots, voters, turnout. So total, we saw 64,109 ballots cast in this election across those 4 different counting groups. And we flip to the next side. I'm just going in the order that the report gives us. So the next slide is the Republican results, the official and complete results. So you can see the different types cast across the top, and then the results for each candidate there, as well as the turnout. And then if we flip one more, that'll give us the Democrat results. And so one thing that we heard pretty early, and we realized the morning after the election, is that our number of ballots cast did not equal the number of Democrat votes plus the number of Republican votes. We were short. How could that be, right? So if we flip over to the next slide, a little bit of election definitions. There's 3 terms that you'll hear me say a lot, so I want to make sure we're all thinking of the same thing. A blank ballot means that you made no selections. If there's multiple races, you didn't make any selection. It allows you to print a blank ballot. A voter has the right to vote their ballot how they want, right? If you just want to get that voter credit and you don't care about what's on the ballot, you can submit that blank ballot, okay? An undervote means that you did not make a selection in a single race. So if we have 3 races on the ballot, but you only vote in 2, that means you undervoted the 3rd race. So your ballot would have 2 votes and 1 undervote, okay? Then there's overvotes. That means that you made more selections than allowed for a race. So if you want to vote for 2 people for president, you would have voted for 2, and then that would be considered an overvote. However, when you vote on the ICX, that ballot marking device that I already talked about earlier, that machine will not allow you to overvote. So it will allow you to cast a blank ballot, and it will allow you to undervote a race, but it will not allow you to overvote a race. So think city council, you vote for 5 at a time, it wouldn't allow you to vote for 6. It would gray out after you've chosen 5 names. And so when we look at these things together, in this case, blank ballot is the same as an undervote because there was only 1 race, right? So if you cast a blank ballot, it means you had 1 undervote. And the casting of blank ballots is what created this quote-unquote discrepancy between the total ballots cast and the total votes cast. So I went through every single tape for both our precincts, and our AIP team did the AIP machines after Election Day, and this is how we discovered this, that when we look at the total number of ballots cast, but then we add the number of Republican votes cast, because that's what was first on the tape, and then you add the total number of Democrat votes cast in a lot of precincts that came up short. And that's because there were blank ballots that were cast. So if we flip to the last slide, this kind of shows you the breakdown of where those numbers are. So when you look at the election night report that's on the Secretary of State's website, on our website, and you look at that total number of ballots cast versus the number of results, this is where you'll see those discrepancies. So we had 14 blank ballots that were cast under Republican ballots for Election Day, 477 blank Democrat ballots were cast on Election Day, 14 blank Republican ballots were cast in advance voting, 151 blank Democratic ballots were cast in advance voting, and then straight down the middle, 3 and 3 absentee by mail blank ballots cast either way, and then provisional, 0 Republican provisional blanks, and 3 blank Democratic provisional. So that gets us to the total of 665, which is where we see that discrepancy between total ballots cast at the top and total votes for Republicans cast and total cast for Democrats. So that's kind of the breakdown of that there. I will say for the overvote, like I said, when you vote in person, that ICP won't allow you to do that, but we could have overvotes in provisional because those are hand-marked paper ballots, provisional or emergency, and are absentee by mail, since those are also hand-marked paper ballots. So those are the instances where we could see overvotes, but not on Election Day machine ballots, those ballot marking device ballots that are cast. And so with that, I'll open up for questions. I know it was a lot of numbers, a lot of pizza.
So I want to go back to the absentee by mail CPD. I think that's the second or the third slide.
The voter card?
No. It's the second or the third slide.
6 of 19.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
One
Go
more.
back one, yes, that one.
There we go, thanks.
Rejected, I know of the 184 that were rejected, 44 were cured, so that's 140 that are out there that were not cured. What were you finding, or what were you and the team seeing as the basis for the rejection, just generally?
I would need to double check with Dominique. I did not get that data before coming, so
Okay.
I'll double check with him and get that back to you guys. Most of them, I know of what I had heard in some of the meetings I sat in on with them were material omissions. So they were missing information on the oath envelope that would allow that ballot to be counted, but I will double check with him and make sure that that's what he was tracking as well.
Okay. And with respect to the Lacora 01 and Lost Mountain 04, you said it was a matter of someone that had a McClure 01 ballot kind of wandering over to the Lost Mountain. I understand that those two precincts were co-located. Have we identified maybe there's an opportunity for a more clear demarcation, even if it's a rope? Or
Absolutely.
something?
I think we'll be adding stanchions in the future to those, as it was in a big, we were, I think, in the gym, and I don't know, maybe they were sharing, they were next to each other, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So we'll circle back with we had 3 co-located precincts, I believe, this election, so we'll get with our poll managers and get their feedback, if that's something. It's never our desire to have a co-located precincts, all of those were temporary moves.
Right.
But we'll kind of debrief with them and hot wash and get that data and then improve for the next.
Okay, because my recollection is, I believe we have at least one, if not 2, co-located precincts for the May primary.
Yes, I believe we'll continue to have
Okay.
those, yeah.
With respect to the cards, as obviously it's our office practice, we receive cards as printed by the Secretary of State. They are received and then mailed out by our office. Admittedly, it's unfortunate that the circumstances were that we updated the information that we could back in January. Do you have a sense of when our office received those cards?
We received them, it was the 2 to 3 weeks before Election Day.
Okay.
We would get maybe 2 batches on Monday and then 2 more batches on Tuesday, and we tracked how many thousands were coming in. And then by the end, once we had gotten word that the data was incorrect, and I understood that the ballots were coming from our office after being corrected.
The cards were coming
The
from
cards, excuse me, sorry, the precinct cards, the white precinct cards. We stopped sending those out. So I think we did end up holding 2 or 3 batches. I believe it was almost 4,000 cards that were not sent out at all because we knew they were incorrect.
And that was going to be my next question. Inasmuch the Secretary of State provides these to us, presumably we have an option not to mail them out.
I think that's a good question. It is my understanding we're not required to send these out. The NCOA mailings, obviously, we would be required, but I will double check with them and see. Sometimes just for data, it'd be easier to work through our own vendor, or at least, like I said, get the date that they're pulling. That way we can double check that data prior to receiving the cards in the mail.
Okay. And then with regard to the election report that you just provided as far as the blank ballots and the undervotes, I believe, and Director Fall provided us, or at least as an FYI, meet with our director on a biweekly basis, and she did share this with me in advance, and I just wanted to be certain that you, in your experience in the prior location where you worked, the same type of equipment was used, and there is the opportunity for the printout to be more specific, such that undervotes and or blank ballots could be a part of the report that is produced, correct?
Yes, so we used a different vendor where I was in Arlington in Virginia, so I'm all new to the Dominion equipment, but I did speak with a Dominion rep this morning, and she mentioned that they do have the capability to provide those numbers, but that we would need to get that approved through CES, through the Secretary of State's office, because all of the tapes across the state need to look the same. So if we wanted that on the tapes, everyone would need to have that on the tapes. And so that's the difference there. And then the big piece of why those undervotes or blank ballots aren't reported in the election night reporting system is because we have split precincts. So in Virginia, it was illegal to have split precincts. And so because we were a hand-marked paper ballot state, so it was too many ballots for the workers. It was way too easy for someone to get the wrong ballot because poll workers were physically handing those ballots out. When you have at least 3 ballot styles, it's recipe for disaster. So here we have a lot of split precincts. That's why we use the ballot marking devices. And so when the election night reporting system sees a split precinct and it sees that maybe me and Ms. Fisher are in the same precinct, but she has one split and I have another, it's not, the system's not going to recognize that. It's going to see that maybe she's in, school board post 7, I'm in 6. I'm not sure if that's right, but so it's not going to see that she had 1 vote for 7 and I had 1 vote for 6, and that's all good. It's going to see that she had a vote for 7 and an undervote for 6, and I'm going to have a vote for 6 and an overvote for 7 because we're in the same precinct. And so the system isn't intricate enough to understand that, and that's why the election night reporting system doesn't show undervotes and blank ballots, is because it can't make that differentiation with the same precincts.
And I understand that this, adding that to the tapes, this line item to the tapes, is something that would need to take place at the Secretariat. That would be a decision at the Secretary of State level. But in your conversation with the Dominion representative, was there any conversation or did she share with you any cost associated with that?
No, she did not. I think that it's just a programming. It's when CES creates our election project, I believe that it's something they could do at that point. Okay. So I'm not sure what cost would be incurred. It wouldn't really change the length of our CVS long receipts anyway, so I think we'd be okay on that front.
Okay. If I might ask, because I know that a voter reached out to me the day after the election because she had gone by, and as per usual, as required, we had our tapes posted. And if that voter has that question, and I could not answer that question, and again, I appreciate your being prompt and giving me an answer and a response that I could give to that voter. But I can't imagine that she's the only voter across the hundreds of thousands of voters in the state of Georgia that could see that discrepancy and raise that question. So perhaps that's something, if you don't mind reaching out to our Secretary of State's office and sharing with them to the extent they're not already aware that there is this opportunity to have that programming done such that those numbers are on the tape.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know whether anyone else had, those were the questions that I had. Mr. Bruni? I'm sorry, go ahead. Ms. Fisher, go ahead.
He comes next.
Okay.
Whatever.
Beauty before age.
Oh. Regarding redistricting, we're going to be done by April 1st.
Yes, end of March.
What happens then? Will we mail out all new precinct cards?
This is a great question. Once I learned the process of the white precinct cards, I asked if we had another one coming up before the May election, and they did say at that time that they believed they would be sending out another batch. So I'm hoping now we can work with them, now that I understand the process fully, to make sure that that data is pulled at a time where it would be 100% accurate. If not, then we will, if they don't plan on sending out cards, we will send out our own to make sure all voters are aware of their new districts and their new lines.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is that it?
Yep.
My turn. I do have a couple of questions. One on the risk limiting audit. They're choosing the number of ballots and where they're pulled from through their lottery process, correct?
Right, through a software system.
And I think I also understood that our counts will be uploaded to Arlo rather than recorded in what we do when we're familiar with just a regular hand count.
That's correct. And that software would tell us whether or not we're within the risk limit that the Secretary of State has established.
And what is that? Because Arlo was highly controversial in 2020 because I believe it was set at, I want to say 5% was within the guidelines. Don't hold me to that number. I still have PTSD from that period, but I think it was a percentage. And I think that's helpful information for people to know. especially those monitoring, because you do a certain count at the end of the day, and then it shows up in a report and it's not the same.
Right. Yeah,
So-
I'll check. I'm not sure if the risk limit is set in code. I know in Virginia it was, so that's what makes me think that. But I will check and see, and I'll make sure that before we start the risk limiting audit, both for observers and for the public, that will give a full explanation of what's going to happen, what the risk limit is, which batches have been pulled, what the procedure is. That way everyone's on the same page.
Perfect. The other question I have is the Secretary of State cards, as well as our cards, went out with which BOC districts?
Our cards did not have districts. It just was alerting people whose precinct has changed. So it just said, you know, McClure 01, McClure Middle School, or whichever ones had changed. I believe it was Lost Mountain 04, actually, that was moved to McClure Middle School. And then the Secretary of State cards went out with the data that is currently on my voter page. So that would have been what is referred to as the state drawn commission maps.
So after the April 1st, their cards will be the home rule districts?
Yes.
Or do we know that for a fact?
That's what we're putting into MVP because that's
Okay.
what was qualified under. And that is, you know, the train left the station at that point. Once we're qualified under that map, that's the map that the ballots were built under. And the ballots go out April 6th.
So it should pull from that. We might want to give an explanation of that somewhere. Blank ballots. So on the precinct summary sheet, when they close down the polls, does that have blank ballot, a number account for blank ballots on there?
No, it does not.
It doesn't.
I think in this election, it's easy to say that it was blank ballots because it was one race, right? It is harder to be able to put those numbers together without it being on the tape when there's multiple races on the ballot.
So how difficult would it be to go back and look at the images in a couple of those precincts that show the discrepancy? The list I gave you might be a good place to start, and just have someone scan the images to verify it was blank ballots.
Yeah, we'll see that in the risk limiting audit. There were only a handful of precincts that did not have a blank ballot. So most precincts had at least one. Some had up to 9, I believe was the highest I saw. Like I said, I went through the tapes and I did the math on every single one myself. So we will be able to capture that in the risk limiting audit. And I believe even on the spreadsheet you sent me that one of the observers had noted that when they were collecting the ballots and putting them together that they did see several blanks, and they're like, that's why our tape is different from the total ballots cast
Yeah.
versus the total votes when you add them together.
Okay, thank you.
Did anyone else have any questions for Director Paul? And thank you, Mr. Bruning, for raising the question with regard to the new precinct cards. Okay. If there is nothing further, did we show the results? We usually can. Does CP have a copy of this? Okay. I apologize. Thank you. Actually, if you'll, pull it down, so it's what's up top. So, and again, thank you, Director Fall, for the report, as well as entertaining all of the questions. If there are no further questions with regard to the results of the March 12th presidential preference primary, we'll entertain a vote to certify these results.
I move that we certify.
I'm sorry. I entertain a motion to certify the results.
I move that we certify the results as presented in the report provided by Director Tate.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to certify the results as presented for the March 12th, 2024 presidential preference primary. All of those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. I don't know, do you have any additional updates for us?
I don't think so, not at this time.
Okay, excellent. I do not, as board chair, have any updates. Greg, welcome back. We haven't seen you in a while. No executive session? Okay. At this point, board member comments? No?
I'd just like to ask, how did Greg get that tan with no?
Turn your mic on.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I do have a comment.
Sure.
And Tate, my hat goes off to you for this being your very first election in Cobb County. I'm fairly certain no one will have the story you now have with all of the issues that met you at the door when you came in. And I just want to commend you for the way in which you've handled everything, the even-handedness, addressing issues immediately. I mean, I wasn't on the board prior, but I know from the other side of this dais, the transparency was not always there on the issues. And so I just want to commend you for your transparency, thoroughness, even-handedness, and you've dealt like it true, seasoned election director with years and years and years of experience, and thank you.
Hear, hear.
I echo that. You have come in at a time where we are in the midst of a lot of transition, in the midst of a lot of challenges, a fair amount of those not by our own doing. And, you always accept the call, you always accept encouragement, and that's why I've changed, you know that I've changed the way that I speak. I would encourage you to do X, Y, or Z, and I can absolutely appreciate you walking in the authority, running that office, not just the election itself. Obviously, we've had some challenges with respect to personnel, and you're keeping that ship moving, and I commend you. And each of us are here to support you in whatever way that we might be able to. So I guess at this point, we will look ahead to May, another election right around the corner. Unless there is anything further, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. But before doing so, our next meeting will be here on April the 8th at 3 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned at 4:15.